أفلا يعلم إذا بعثر ما في القبور وحصل ما في الصدور إن ربهم بهم يومئذ لخبير. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تهتدون. ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون إلى الخير ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون. ولا تكونوا كالذين تفرقوا واختلفوا من بعد ما جاءهم البينات وأولئك لهم عذاب عظيم. يوم تبيض وجوه وتسود وجوه فأما الذين اسودت وجوههم أكفرتم بعد إيمانكم وأما الذين ابيضت وجوههم ففي رحمة الله هم فيها خالدون تلك آيات الله نتلوها عليك بالحق وما الله يريد ظلما للعالمين صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Beneficent. Hold fast all together to Allah's cord and do not be divided into sects. Remember Allah's blessing upon you when you were enemies. Then He brought your hearts together, so you became brothers with His blessing. And you were on the brink of a pit of fire, whereat He saved you from it. Thus does Allah clarify His signs for you, so that you may be guided. There has to be a nation among you summoning to the good, bidding what is right and forbidding what is wrong. It is they who are the felicitous. Do not be like those who became divided and differed after manifest signs had come to them. For such there will be a great punishment. On the day when some faces will turn white and some faces will turn black. As for those faces turned black, it will be said to them, did you disbelieve after your faith? So taste the punishment because of what you used to disbelieve. But as for those whose faces become white, they shall dwell in Allah's mercy, and they will remain in it forever. These are the signs of Allah, which we recite to you in truth, and Allah does not desire any wrong for the creatures. Sadaqallahu al-Aliyyul Azim. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn, Mawla Hussain. King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn, Mawla Hussain. Sayyidu Shuhada, Imamul Insi wal Jinna Hussain. Sayyidu Shuhada, Imamul Insi wal Jinna Hussain. Marhaba ya Aba Abdullah, ya Aba Akbar Hussain. Warithul Adam Abullah Harar Imami ya Hussain. Father of infant Abdullah and Ali Akbar Hussain. O inheritor of Adam, father of freedom Hussain. King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn, Mawla Hussain. Sayyidu Shuhada, Imamul Insi wal Jinna Hussain. الحسين مني قال وأنا من الحسين. أنت سيد أهل الجنة والسفينة يا Hussain. Mustafa said, you are from me, I am from you, O Hussain. Prince of Paradise, you are a sanctuary, O Hussain. King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn, Moula Hussain.
Sayyidu Shuhada, Imamul Insi wal Jinnah Hussain.
مرحبا يا ثار الله خيرة الله مصطفى. أنت نفس المطمئنة، أنت مصباح الهدى. Your avenger is Allah, your selector is Allah. Your contented soul a lamp of guidance in every era. King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn, Moula Hussain.
Sayyidu Shuhada, Imamul Insi wal Jinnah Hussain.
أنك قمت الصلاة، أنك أتيت الزكاة، أنك قمت الصلاة، أنك أتيت الزكاة. قد أمرت بالمعروف ونهيت المنكرات. You established prayer and gave your everything in charity. You enjoined the right, forbidding justice and iniquity. King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn,
Moula Hussain. Sayyidu Shuhada, Imamul Insi wal Jinnah Hussain.
مرحبا يا ثار الله خيرة الله مصطفى. أنت نفس المطمئنة، أنت مصباح الهدى. Your avenger is Allah, your selector is Allah. Your contented soul a lamp of guidance in every era. King of martyrs,
O Imam of man and jinn, Moula Hussain. Sayyidu Shuhada, Imamul Insi wal Jinnah Hussain.
Assalamu alayka ya ibn al-Mustafa wal-Murtada. Marhaba ya ibn Khadija, Noor Ayn al-Fatima. Salutations to the son of Mustafa and Murtada. Marhaba, son of Khadija and the heart of Fatima. King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn, Mawla Hussain, Sayyidul Shuhada, Imamul Insi wal Jinnah Hussain, King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn, Mawla Hussain, Sayyidul Shuhada, Imamul Insi wal Jinnah Hussain. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Mu'mineen and Mu'minat, a few announcements before we ask Moulana Syed Aqib Jaffry to join us on the mimbar. The first announcement is that the majalis here start at 5:20 p.m. and Maulana takes the mimbar at 5:45 p.m. Those of you who are listening in from abroad, joining us live on YouTube, kindly note those timings. We also have a question and answer session after Maulana finishes his majlis and after the Nauha, but before the ziyarat, we have a 10-minute question and answer session. You can post your questions on slido.com, slido.com, with the code Muharram-1444. Muharram is Muharram 2022, and those questions will reach us and will be answered by Maulana given the constraints of time. Please make sure that your questions are pertinent to the content of the speech. Mu'mineen and Mu'minat, many of you have contributed to Tabarruk. Some have contributed anonymously. Let us recite Ba'd al-Salawat, Suratul Fatiha, for the marhumeen and marhumat of all those who have helped in organizing, who have participated in this majlis, who have contributed to the Tabarruk, those and their marhumeen and marhumat. Let us recite a Suratul Fatiha for them, Ba'd al-Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman. Wa Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Brothers and sisters, as you know, the topic of these majalis is Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam, a manifestation of the Holy Quran. This is the fifth in the series of 9 majalis. Maulana has touched upon important aspects of the Quran, the need for ma'rifah, the link between ma'rifah and ibadat. And yesterday he spoke about Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar, which is part of our furu'ud-din, but as he explained, a fundamental part of our religious duty, and especially the religious duty of the prophets and the A'immah. So without further ado, I will request Hujjatul Islam Moulana Syed Ali Aqib Jaffry to come and recite the 5th of the series of 9 majalis on Imam Hussain, a manifestation of the Holy Quran. Please welcome him with the loudest of salawats. Allahumma.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين سيدنا ونبينا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب قلوبنا بالقاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الغر الميامين المعصومين من يومنا هذا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وخطابه المتين وهو أصدق القائلين وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم. صلوات God created mankind so that he could reach its perfection. And in order to motivate mankind towards perfection, he instilled in mankind the love for perfection. And because man is a social being, he lives in societies. Even though man can live alone if he so desires in a mountain, but that would not be consistent with the purpose of his creation, for there are a lot of virtues that man would not be able to cultivate within himself if he were to live alone. Like the virtue of sharing and caring and love. Those would only be, and sacrifice. Those would only be possible when man lived in societies. So the perfection of man depends on the formation of a society. And the healthier a society is, the easier it becomes for mankind to achieve its purpose of creation, which is perfection. That is why most prophets, almost all prophets who were assigned this task, worked towards the formation of a healthy society. A society in which the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could be implemented and practiced. One of the prime goals of all the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or objectives of all the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was setting up such a kingdom, such a government where the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be fulfilled. And that is what the 12th Imam will do when he reappears. It is the fulfillment of the desire of all the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it is through favorable conditions that man will achieve perfection. So imagine if you have a fertilized egg, and instead of putting it in an incubator, you put it in a refrigerator. What would happen? It will either not hatch, the animal would die, or if it hatches, it will be a defective or handicapped creature. So favorable conditions play an important role in our development, in our spiritual development. That is why it was important that a society be set up where the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are implemented so that society can flourish and achieve the perfection for which it was created. And with society, there was a risk of the deterioration of the society. So it was important that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sets up a mechanism through which the society could fight the viruses that breed in these societies, the germs that breed in this society. And that system, that mechanism is called Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. When the inhabitants of a society command towards good and forbid each other from evil, how can evil grow in that society? It cannot. It is one thing to take action against, for example, dengue fever by spraying and killing the mosquitoes, but it is another thing to actually stopping water from accumulating in the first place. So Amar bil Maruf is a mechanism. If Amar bil Maruf is practiced correctly and everybody does their responsibility, we would be immune from all external influences. It would not be easy for others to infiltrate Islamic communities and corrupt them. It will all happen through Amar bil Ma'ruf. That is why this is such an important obligation, such an important task. I gave the example yesterday that it is similar to the immune system of a human body. If a body loses its immunity, imagine what would happen. Similarly, if a society loses Amr bil Maruf and Nahi anil Munkar, if this important obligation is ignored, then according to one of the traditions, it says that when people ignore Amr bil Maruf wa Nahi anil Munkar, what is going to happen? Eventually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will appoint corrupt leaders on them. This will be the eventual outcome of ignoring Amr bil Maruf and Nahi anil Munkar, that they will be ruled by corrupt leaders who will show no mercy on them. And in that state, even if those people, if the pious among this nation prays to Allah, Allah will not listen to their prayers. Allah will not listen to their prayers. At that point, if a society gets to that point, the solution would be to stand up against evil and fight it with your blood. So before a system gets to that state, it is important that we all fulfill our responsibility. Another example, if you want to compare Amr bil Ma'ruf, would be to that of taqwa. What does taqwa do to an individual? It protects him. How do you define taqwa? What is taqwa? How do you translate that? Taqwa is generally translated as fear of Allah, reliance on Allah. A better translation of that would be tawakkul. Reliance would be tawakkul. Taqwa is translated as fear of Allah. But is Allah something to be feared? Why should one fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah is the most beautiful being. Why should one fear? He is the most perfect being, most lovable, most admirable, most desirable being. So why should one fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He is not something to be feared, and he should not be feared. So why do we say fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We get the answer in Dua Joshan-e-Kabir. For those who paid attention to this translation, it says, وَلَا يُخَافُ إِلَّا عَدْلُهُ. He is not feared except for His adl. It is His adl that we fear, not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَا يُرْجَى إِلَّا فَضْلُهُ. And He is not hoped except for His fazl. So it is His fear, it is His adl that we fear. And it is His fazl that we hope. That is why we have this dua, Amilna bi fazlik. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, deal with us with your fazl, wala tu'amilna bi adlik. Do not deal with us with your adl, because if He deals us with His adl, we stand no chance. Amilna bi fazlik, wala tu'amilna bi adlik. The same question still stands. Should we fear the adl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Adl is a good thing. Adl is a desirable thing. We should not fear the adl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why do we fear the adl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It is not the fear of the adl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is the fear of the outcome of our actions if adl is exercised. So we are afraid of the outcomes of our own actions. So taqwa is that inner force that protects us, that prevents us from sinning. That is called taqwa. And taqwa is one of the conditions for our ibadat to be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A condition, ibadat ki qabuliyat ki shart, innama yataqabbal Allahu minal muttaqeen. When in the story of Hazrat Adam's children, Habil and Qabil, when both of them presented a qurbani, a sacrifice, it got accepted from one and it did not get accepted from the other. What did he say? What did Habil say to Qabil? Innama yataqabbal Allahu minal muttaqeen. Don't blame me. Allah accepts only from the muttaqeen. Taqwa is one of the conditions for our actions, for our salat and sawm and azadari and hajj, everything. If it is not coupled with taqwa, it will not be accepted. And our donations, whatever. Taqwa is a condition. And when the Imam was asked, what is taqwa? Imam said, taqwa is that God does not find you at places where He has forbidden you to be. And He does not find you absent from where He has commanded you to be. जहाँ पर आपकी present लगनी है वहाँ पर absent ना लगे, और जहाँ पर absent लगनी चाहिए वहाँ पर present ना लगे. This is the definition, or basic simple definition of taqwa. And you must have heard that story, and for those, the youth who might not have heard this before, it's important that it gets repeated. In the time of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, the news spread about a very muttaqi person, a pious person, who helps people a lot, who gives a lot of charity, and some of the companions of the Imam Hussain also started talking about him and were inspired by him. So the Imam decided to see who this person was and why suddenly he has become so famous. So he went to the crowd and he saw that people had gathered around him and he was talking to them in a strange manner. The Imam found it strange. But the Imam, without introducing himself, he stood at a distance and saw what he was doing. And he noticed that suddenly this person left the crowd and started to walk. And the Imam started to follow him. To notice that he stops at a bread store, and before the owner of the store noticed anything, he picked 2 pieces of bread and moved on. This action was very surprising for the Imam. Why did he pick the bread without him noticing it? But then, based on the hukum of Islam that you do husn zan, maybe they have an agreement and he takes 2 loaves every day and he will pay at the end of the month, so no judgments were passed. He continued to walk, to follow him, to notice that he then stops at a fruit shop and then he picks 2 fruits, again in the same manner without him noticing. The Imam continues to follow. And then he reaches a place where there were poor people, and then he distributes these 4 things to the needy. At that point, the Imam stopped him and asked him this question: I've seen certain strange things from you. Why did you do that? Why did you take those 2 loaves of bread and those 2 fruits without the permission? And then you distributed them to the poor. He turned to the Imam, looked at the Imam, and he said, you looked from an honorable family. Are you the son of the Holy Prophet? And he said, yes. He said, the Quran was revealed in your house and yet you do not understand my actions? And the Imam said, no, I do not. What do you mean? Then he said, have you not heard this verse of the Holy Quran? Man jaa bil hasana, whoever brings a good deed, falahu ashru amthaliha, he will be rewarded 10 times his value. And have you not read this? Have you not read this verse of the Holy Quran? Man jaa bis sayyi'ah, whoever brings a bad deed, whoever comes with a bad deed, fala yujza illa mithlaha, he will not be punished except for its like. So each good deed will be rewarded 10 times and each bad deed will be rewarded 1 time. So I stole 4 things, so I get -4. And then I gave them in charity, so I have 4 acts of charity, and that's 40. So 40 minus 4 is 36. So I still have 36 goods with me, 36 nekis with me. You can't even understand this simple maths. The Imam turned to him and said, have you not heard this verse of the Holy Quran? إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ minal muttaqeen. Allah accepts only and only from the muttaqeen. When you stole those 4 things, you got -4. And then you gave away someone else's property without their permission as charity. So that's 4 more minus. So it's -8 and not +36. That you are thinking. And then when the Imam came back to his companions, he narrated this whole story and told them that people, ignorant people like this, who interpret the Quran based on their own limited intellect, deceive themselves and others. So taqwa is the condition of the acceptance of our actions. The same role that taqwa plays in our individual lives is played by Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar in a society. It stops the society from corruption and decaying. And those who ignore this, a society that ignores this important obligation, will continue to decay. And as we studied yesterday, you'll get to a stage where the munkar will become ma'roof, the virtues will become vices, and the vices will become virtues. You must have heard the story of Sabt. In Bani Israel, there was a nation, probably in the time of the Prophet Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam, because Bani Israel had lots of prophets. So they were commanded not to fish on the day of Saturday. Sabt. Sabt means Saturday. So they were commanded not to fish on that day. And the Holy Quran talks about this story in this manner. وَاسْأَلْهُمْ عَنِ الْقَرْيَةِ الَّتِي كَانَتْ حَازِرَةَ الْبَحْرِ. Ask them about the city that was next to the ocean, next to the river, and they were stopped from forbidden. It was forbidden on them to fish on Saturday. And Saturday would be the day when the fish would come near the brink of the ocean, and they would be readily available. But during the other days when they were permitted to fish, it was hard to find fish. And God tests all of us in different ways. So initially they started to make little ponds so that they could block the fish that would come there on Saturday. They would enter this pond and then they would stop the pond. They cut off the pond from the ocean, and then on the other days they would get all the fish. And then gradually they ignored this ruling of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and started to fish on Saturdays as well. Now the reaction of the nation to this action was that it divided into 2 groups. So one group was that which was doing this evil, this sin. The others divided into 2 groups. One of them stopped them from this act. They advised them and admonished them. Then there was another group who said they are sinning, Allah will send its azab on them. And they would say to this group, why are you bothered? Why are you wasting your time? Stopping them from this. The verse says, وَإِذْ قَالَتْ أُمَّةٌ مِّنْهُمْ. When a group of people from within them said, لِمَا تَعِذُونَ قَوْمًا. Why are you advising? Why are you admonishing this nation, this group? Allahu muhlikuhum. Allah will destroy them. Halak kar dega khuda. Allahu muhlikuhum aw mu'azzibuhum. Or He will punish them. One of this will happen to them. Azaban shadida. So they were upset that this is happening, and they were expecting azab to come. But they were saying to the other group, why are you stopping them? Allah will punish them. Qalud, what did they say? Ma'aziratan ila rabbikum. So that we do not have so that we have an excuse before Allah. That we did our job of Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar. وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَّقُونَ. And maybe They listen, maybe they stop. So there's a hope that they would stop. And then it is our duty to do Amar bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. And when the azab came, the verse says, فَلَمَّا نَسُوا مَا ذُكِّرُوا بِهِ أَنْجَيْنَا الَّذِينَ يَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ السُّوءِ. When our azab came, we saved only that group who used to stop them from evil. The azab came on both of these groups. The one that were actually committing the sin and the one that were indifferent, hoping that Allah will punish them and we don't have a responsibility. This is the significance and this is the importance of Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. If this obligation is stopped, is ignored, then we become part of the sin. And this, because this is a fiqhi topic as well and has a deep relation with one's heart, we see that this topic is discussed in the books of fiqh as well as in the books of aqaid and kalam as well, because of its relation with one's heart, that you need to detest sins with your heart. Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salatu was salam in a statement says, Ayyuhal mu'minun, O mu'mins, innahu man ra'a udwanan yu'mal bihi wa munkaran yud'a ilay. Whoever sees an evil act and people being invited towards an evil act, fa'ankarahu biqalbihi, and detests it in his heart, faqad salima wa bari'a, he is safe. He is safe. وَمَنْ أَنْكَرَهُ بِاللِّسَانِهِ, and whoever stops it, whoever detests it with his lisan, with his tongue, فَقَدْ أُجِرَ, he will be rewarded. وَهُوَ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ صَاحِبِهِ, and he is better than the other group. So this is the second level of Amr bil Ma'ruf. First is Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahy anil Munkar with your heart. And if you have the power to stop it with your tongue, then that is a better level. وَمَنْ أَنْكَرَهُ بِالسَّيْفِ, and whoever stops it with force, لِتَكُونَ كَلِمَةُ اللَّهِ هِيَ الْعُلِيَّةِ, so that the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is supreme, so that the sanctity of La ilaha illallah is not violated. If you do that, وَكَلِمَةُ الظَّالِمِينَ هِيَ السُّفْلَى, and the word of the zalim is lowered, is abased. فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي أَصَابَ سَبِيلُ الْهُدَى أَصَابَ سَبِيلَ الْهُدَى, he is the one who has reached the path of guidance. وَقَامَ عَلَى الطَّرِيقِ, and he is on the right path. وَنَفَّرَ فِي قَلْبِهِ الْيَقِينَ, and he is the one on whose heart yaqeen has shown. Yaqeen has shown. So 3 levels of Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahy anil Munkar: your lisan, your heart, your lisan, and by force. And based on your status, based on the powers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, based on if you are the divine trustee of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your responsibility is different. Imam Hussain during his movement, he announced, when he was leaving, he said, I am leaving to do Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. And if somebody was to ask, what level of Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar are you going to perform? In one of his speeches, he said, Ayyuhan Nas, to his companions who were following. He made it very clear to all of them that this is not going to be an easy ride. It is difficult. So the people should side with him knowing what they are going to go through. He said, Ayyuhan Nas, faman kana minkum yasbiru ala haddis sayf. Whoever from among you can bear the sharpness of the sword, wa ta'anil asinna, and the pains of the spears, जो तलवार की तेजी को और नेज़े की चुभन को बर्दाश्त कर सकता है, फल यकुम माना, they should come with us. وَإِلَّا فَلْيَنْصَرِفْ. And if you cannot bear that, leave us. It was very clear from the very beginning. He knew what he was going to do. He knew what was going to happen. There were no secrets about his movement from the very first day. And throughout his journey, he used to inform them on what was going to happen. And even when he was leaving Medina, and when he went to the grave of his grandfather, what did he say there? In the second visit, when he visited the grave, he said, Allahumma haza qabru nabiyyik. Oh Allah, this is the grave of your Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wa ana ibnu bintik, and I am the son of his daughter. Wa qad hazarani min al-amr, and I am faced with the situation. Wa qad alimta Allahumma inni uhibbul ma'ruf wa ankarul munkar. And you know that I love ma'ruf and I hate munkar. Telling what his movement, telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what his choice is going to be. I will be doing Amar bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar. When Hazrat Muslim bin Aqil, may Allah elevate his station, when he was captured and Ibn Ziyad turned to him and said, why have you come in our cities to spread corruption and do fasad in our cities? What did he reply? He said, Ma lihaza a'taitu, I did not come for this. Walakinnakum azhartum al-munkar wa dafantumul ma'ruf. You are the ones who have spread munkarat and you have buried the ma'ruf. Ma'ruf ko tum logon ne dafan kar diya hai. Fa'ataynahum, so we have come to them. Lina'amarahum bil ma'ruf, so that we should command them to ma'ruf wa nanhahum anil munkar. So that we stop them from munkar. This was and is one of the most important objectives of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. And when you want to evaluate the success of any movement, you look at whether that movement was able to accomplish its objectives or not. The movement, the objective of Imam Hussain was not to get to power, was not to become a shaheed. That was going to be the event, one of the possible results of his movement. His movement was to present and expose the true nature, the true face of Bani Umayyah. And as a result of that, he would either get to power and implement the Kalimatullah and make it uliya and supreme, or he would achieve shahadat. Either way, his purpose, his mission would be accomplished, and that is why he succeeded in his mission. And we see that today. There's no one to take the name of Yazid, and in every corner of the world, you see the commemoration of Imam Hussain going on. This is a sign of his success. He wanted the religion and the name of the Holy Prophet to stay alive. When Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam returned to Medina, a person came to him and asked, Man ghulib? So who won? Who won? And what did Imam reply? We see that in history, that one of the leaders of one of the rulers of Bani Umayyah said to one of his companions said to him and went to him and said, you have had enough, you have done enough zulm on the Ahlul Bayt. They are, after all, they're your family members. Now that you have power, now that you have the Khilafat with you, stop this injustice and cruelty to the Ahlul Bayt. He turns to him and said, the first caliph, he came and he did his service to religion, and when he died, his name went away with him. Then came the second caliph, and he did what he did, and when he left, there's nobody to take his name. The same happened with the third caliph. But I see that the name of the Prophet of Allah is being recited from the pulpits 5 times a day. As you also see that every now and then there is a movement to desecrate the holy name of the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Islam will stay alive as long as the name of the Holy Prophet will stay alive. And there is an attempt to bury the name of the Holy Prophet. And when the Imam returned to Medina, and this person came to the Imam and asked him, Man ghalib, who was successful? Who was victorious? Who emerged victorious? The Imam replied, wait for a while. And when the Azan is recited and the Iqamat is said, you will know who won. The name of the Holy Prophet of Allah is still there in the Azan and in the Iqamat. That was the movement of Imam Hussain to protect the name of the Holy Prophet. And Salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. To protect the name and the teachings of the Holy Prophet. One of the examples, and inshallah we'll move to Masahib, one of the examples of Amar bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar in the life of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. We generally hear about his bravery and his courage after Yazid took over. There are instances, and lots of them, based on how much has been recorded, there are enough instances to show his bravery and courage during the time when Yazid had not taken power. Muawiyah, the ruler of Sham, wrote a letter to Marwan, the ruler of Medina, with this request. As you know, there were efforts being made to make arrangements for Yazid to become the caliph. So there was a movement going on, and there was bay'ah being taken from different tribes, even during the time of the previous caliph, that the ruler of Sham, that arrangements should be made and people should be ready to pay allegiance to Yazid when he sits on the throne. And probably one of the attempts was to establish a relationship with the family of the household. So he sent a letter to Marwan saying that I want you to ask the hand of Kulthum, the daughter of Abdullah ibn Ja'far, for my son Yazid. So imagine the king, and the king is asking for the hand of the daughter of Abdullah ibn Ja'far, and refusing. What would it mean if you were to refuse? When Marwan asked Abdullah, he said, well, this matter will be dealt by Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. It is in his ikhtiyar. He is the one who is going to make a final decision regarding Kulthum. And when Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam was informed, he prayed that whatever is better should transpire. And it was decided that he would give a response on a certain date. So on that certain date, the crowd gathered in the mosque. Imam was there, Marwan was there, people were there listening. And this is what Marwan said. I would like you to notice, I won't discuss and go into a lot of detail, I'll just read the incident, and I want you to notice the courage and bravery and how Imam ﷺ defended religion and expressed his opinions. He said, O Imam Hussain ﷺ, Amirul Mu'mineen has ordered me to seek Kulthum's hand for Yazid and assign a mahriya for her according to her father's wishes, however high it might be, whatever they want. It's a blank check. Whatever mahriya you want to put, we're ready. Plus, along with the friendship between the tribes of Bani Umayyah and Bani Hashim, friendship will be established between these two tribes, and a payment of all outstanding debt of her father. Proposal with these three conditions: whatever mahriya you want, however high it might be, friendship between these two tribes, and all outstanding debt. Then he addressed to the Imam saying, you should know that those who will envy you for this relationship with the family of Yazid are far more than those who will envy him for his relationship with your family. This was an insult. वो लोग जो आप पर गिब्ता करेंगे कि आपका ताल्लुक किस फैमिली के साथ बन गया, वो कहीं ज्यादा हैं उनसे जो यजीद पर गिब्ता होगा उनको कि काश उसका ताल्लुक इस फैमिली के साथ हो जाए. And then he says, और मुझे हैरत है, it's really surprising for me that Yazid is assigning a mahriya. And someone like the status of Yazid has agreed to mahriya for this family. So it's another insult. And then he says, whereas people seek rain from Allah by tawassul through Yazid. This is the status of this family. People will envy you more than him. I'm surprised why he has assigned a mahriya, and people seek rain from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his tawassul. When he was finished, now listen to the response of the Imam and the Amr bil Maruf that he is doing and the way that he is doing. He said, Alhamdulillah alladhi ikhtarana li nafsih. All praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who chose us for himself. Wartazana li deene. And he is razi with us, he chose us or he selected us for his religion. Wastafana ala khalqih. And he chose us over all of his creation. وَأَنزَلَ عَلَيْنَا كِتَابَهُ وَوَحْيَهُ. And he revealed his book and his revelation on us. Then he swear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I swear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لَا يَنْقُصُنَا أَحَدٌ مِّنْ حَقِّنَا شَيْئًا إِلَّا انْتَقَصَهُ مِنْ حَقِّهِ فِي عَاجِلِ دُنْيَاهُ وَآخِرَتَهُ. There is not a single person who takes away anything from our haqq except that Allah takes away from their haqq in this dunya and the akhirah. जो भी हमारे हक से किसी चीज को कम करे, खुदावंद आलम दुनिया में भी और आखिरत में भी उनके हक को कम कर देता है. वला यकूनु अलैना दौलतुन इल्ला कानत लना al-aqibah. And whoever has a temporary rule over us should know that the eventual akhirah, the aqibat, belongs to us. And they will surely know it after a short time, that we will prevail. And then he responded. So after introducing his family, he responds, Ya Marwan, qad qulta fasami'na. You said what you wanted to say, and I've heard what you said. And then one by one, he addresses him. His points. He says, Amma qawluka, when you said, Mahruha hukmu abiha balighan ma balag, that the mahr will be whatever his father appoints, however high it might be. Fala amri. I swear to my life, لو أردنا ذلك ما عدونا سنة رسول الله في بناتنا ونسائه وأهل بيته وهو 12 أوقية. If we were to do that, we will not exceed the mahriya that the Holy Prophet used to appoint. We will not exceed the mahriya that the Holy Prophet appointed for his daughters and his women and his children and the Ahlul Bayt, which is 480 dirhams. In which if you calculate based on the weight of dirham, it comes out to around $700 based on last year or 2 years calculation. So the rates might change today. Then he says, وَأَمَّا قَوْلُكَ, and your statement, مَعَ قَضَاءِ دَيْنِ أَبِيهِ, that we will pay the all outstanding debt of her father. Say, فَمَتَا كُنَّ نِسَاؤُنَا يَقْضِينَ عَنَّا دُيُونَنَا. Since when did our daughters start paying off our debts? हमारी बेटियां कब से हमारे कर्जों को अदा करने लगी? وَأَمَّا الصُّلْحُ مَا بَيْنَ هَذَيْنِ الْحَيَّيْنِ. And when you talk about sulh and peace between these two tribes, Banu Umayyah and Banu Hashim, فَإِنَّا قَوْمٌ آدَيْنَاكُمْ فِي اللَّهِ وَلَمْ نَكُنْ نُصَالِحُكُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا. We are a nation who are your enemies because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How could we make peace with you because of our dunya? हमारा झगड़ा खुदा की बिना पर है, दुनिया के मफादात की बिना पर नहीं. फलाअमरी लक़द अयन नसब फ़कैफ़ सबब, जब हमारा खूनी रिश्ता हमारे दरमियान सुलह नहीं करा सका तो ये शादी का रिश्ता कैसे करा देगा? When nasab cannot build bridges between us, how can this rishta, this marital rishta, which is very weak? And then he says, وَأَمَّا قَوْلُكَ, and your statement, Al-Ajab li-Yazid kayfa yastamhar, I'm surprised at Yazid how he is assigning a mahriya for him, for this girl, which I've understood to be his statement that Yazid is so high that people should be willing to marry him without a mahriya even. He says, فَقَدْ اسْتَمْحَرَ مَنْ هُوَ خَيْرٌ مِّنْ يَزِيدُ وَمِنْ أَبِي يَزِيدُ وَمِنْ جَدِّ يَزِيدُ. Verily, the Holy Prophet of Allah has appointed mahriya for all the women that he married, while he was better than Yazid and his father and his grandfather. Talking to this family in this manner, not fearing any consequences. The Holy Prophet has appointed mahriya for his family, himself, whenever he married, for the girls, and he was better than Yazid and his father and his grandfather. And then when you said that Yazid is one who has no kuf, who has no equals, because he is going to become the next ruler, فَقَدْ اسْتَمْحَرَ مَنْ هُوَ خَيْرٌ مِّنْ فَمَنْ كَانَ كُفُّهُ قَبْلَ الْيَوْمِ فَهُوَ كُفُّهُ الْيَوْمِ. Whoever was his equal yesterday before his appointment to this position, he remains his kuf today. This station of imarat has not added to his value a single bit. इमारत ने उसकी शान में, शौकत में किसी चीज का इजाफा नहीं किया. जो उसका कुफ कल था वही उसका कुफ आज है. वअम्मा क़ौलुका बिवजहिही युस्तस्क़ल ग़माम, the people seek rain through his tawassul, well, that belongs to the Holy Prophet. It is through the wajh and status of the Holy Prophet that people seek. That you're lying. It is not through Yazid. Look at the style and the words and the strength. وَأَمَّا قَوْلُكَ مَنْ يَغْبِطُنَا بِهِ أَكْثَرُ مِنْ مَنْ يَغْبِطُهُ بِنَا. People who will envy you for your relationship are far more than those who will envy him for his relationship to you. He says, يَغْبِطُنَا بِهِ أَهْلُ الْجَاهِلِ. It will be the Johala who will envy us for our relationship with him. And it will be the Ahlul Aql who will envy him for his relationship to us. And then he turned to the crowd and he said, Fashhadu jamiyan, O people, bear witness that I give Kulthum, the daughter of Abdullah ibn Ja'far, to Qasim bin Muhammad bin Ja'far in marriage on the dowry, on a mahar of 480 dirhams. So he marries off the daughter of Abdullah ibn Ja'far to this person, to Qasim bin Muhammad bin Ja'far, and ends this whole episode in this manner, addressing each and every statement and nullifying each and every claim that he made. The Holy Prophet was better than him and his father and his grandfather. In another statement, when Yazid wrote a letter, or he spoke, when Muawiyah wrote a letter, or he spoke to Imam Hussain, والسلام, saying that if had I known anyone better than Yazid, I would have appointed him as the next in line caliph. The Imam replied, that I am better than him, and my father is better than his father, and my mother is better than his mother, and my grandfather is better than his grandfather. Who else do you need? Ana khairum minhu, wa abi khairum min abihi, wa jaddi khairum min jaddihi, wa ummi khairum min ummihi. You're talking about status, you're talking about virtues. This is Amar bil Ma'ruf. wa nahi anil munkar. And when you do amal al-ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar in this manner, the consequences are clear. When the head of Imam Hussain ﷺ was brought to Yazid, and before the captives were brought in, the head was placed in a tray and presented to Yazid. He turned to his companions and repeated this statement. He said, this is the person who used to say, I am better than Yazid. And that his father, he used to claim that his father is better than the father of Yazid. And that his grandfather is better than the grandfather of Yazid. And that his mother is better than the mother of Yazid. He had that grudge against Imam Hussain. And some of the historians and some of the analysis say that when he wrote the letter to Walid, one of the letters said, seek allegiance from him. And there was a second hidden letter as well, saying, I need his head. The Imam knew he was going to get killed. So he left Medina with his family, taking all his family and his children to expose the true face of Bani Umayyah. On the day of Ashur, when one after the other, the companions of Imam Hussain laid their lives defending Imam Hussain ﷺ, there came a time when the Imam was left all alone. The Imam was left all alone, but Imam being the Imam of the Ummah and his duty being to save as many souls as he can save, he turned to them one last time and used his most secret weapon. First of all, he turned to his martyred companions. He called them one after the other, Ya Muslim ibn Awsaja, Ya Habib ibn Mazahir, Ya Zuhair ibn Qayn, Mali unadikum la tujibuni. What is the matter? I am calling you. Why don't you respond to me? Hal min dhabbin yadhubbu an harami Rasulillah. Is there anyone who is there to defend the haram of the Rasulullah? When the companions used to enter the battlefield, they knew that the Imam was back at the haram, defending the haram of the Ahlul Bayt. They would enter the ranks of the enemy and kill them and fight bravely. But when Imam Hussain went in the battlefield, he knew that the haram and the tents and the camps, there's no one in the camp now. The ladies are all alone. And when he fought and when we attacked, he would always position himself in a manner that he would be in between the camps and the enemy soldiers. The Imam had a difficult battle to fight. And when he was left all alone, he turned to his companions and he turned to the enemy soldiers as well, trying to invoke their emotions. Hal min dhabbin yadhubbu an harami Rasulillah. Is there anyone? Your fight is with me. Is there anyone who is ready to defend the Ahlul Bayt, who is ready to defend the daughters of the Holy Prophet? People started to cry, but they were not ready to help the Imam. It is said that it was as if from the maqtal, the bodies of the companions of Imam Hussain started to move, as if they were saying, Oh Imam, give us one more life, and we will defend the family of the Ahlul Bayt. And the Imam turned to them and said, your lives, तुम्हारी जिंदगियों ने तुम्हारे साथ वफा नहीं की. If you were given another chance, you would be ready to defend your Imam. You have fulfilled your promise. It is this death that is in standing between you and your desire to defend your Imam. It is said that in the camps, when this sada, when this voice was heard, Hal min dhabbin yadhubbu an harami Rasulillah, the ladies in the camps also started to weep and cry. Imam Hussain alayhi salam came back to the tents. He just said goodbye to you. I just bade farewell to you. What is the matter? So when you recite this verse, when you recite this phrase, Ali Asghar begins to tremble. He's very thirsty. The Imam says, hand him over to me. Then he takes Ali Asghar in his hands, and probably he must have put his abba over him to shade him from the sunlight. And when he was bringing Ali Asghar to the enemy soldiers, they thought that Imam has started to bring the Quran. He wants to make peace and he is bringing the Quran. He was bringing the Quran in Natiq for this Quran in Natiq to do what no other companion had done. He brings Ali Asghar to the battlefield, turns to the enemy and addresses them in Lam tarhamuni farhamu hazat tifl. If you have no mercy on me, if you show no mercy on me, at least have some mercy on this person, on this child. Fasquhu sharbatam min al-ma. Give him a sip of water. How much water does a child need? A few drops. And it is said that Ali Asghar was opening his mouth and closing his mouth just like a fish would do when a fish is taken out of water. I don't know how many of you have seen a fish out of water. It would open its mouth and close its mouth. It open and close. This is how Ali Asghar was expressing his thirst. And the Ashkiya started to cry and they turned their faces away from each other. The Imam is invoking their emotions. Maybe someone, maybe another whore will come out of the crowd. But the Ashkiya, when there was a revolution coming in the Ashkiya, and Umar Saad turned to Hurmala, he says, Iqta kalam al-Hussain. Finish Hussein's speech. He did not understand. He said, what should I do? Should I aim at Imam Hussain or should I aim at the little child? He said, don't you look at the whiteness of the gulu, of the throat of this little child? He aimed a three-pronged sword, a three-pronged arrow towards Ali Asghar, and he fired the arrow, and Imam Hussain alayhi salam holding Ali Asghar in his hands. I wonder what would have happened when this three-pronged arrow, which was used to kill elephants, hit Ali Asghar's little throat, the blood dripping from the Ali Asghar's body. Imam Hussain alayhi salam collected the blood in his hands. In such a situation, you need someone to console you. There is no one to console Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Imam Hussain consoles himself saying, Isbar ya nafso, oh my soul, be patient over what has happened. Havwana alayya ma nazala bi. It is easy for me what is happening on me. Annahu bi'aynillah, because it is in front of Allah's eyes. It is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is witnessing whatever is happening. And it was at this time that Imam Hussain alayhi salam remembered all of us with this verse that the poet has recorded it in this manner. Laytakum fi yawmi ashura jami'an. I wish all of you, oh my companions, oh my friends, oh my Shias for all times to come. Laytakum fi yawmi ashura jami'an. I wish all of you were there on the day of Ashur. Tanzuruni, and you would have seen me. You would have seen me do what? Oh Imam, if we were there, we would like to help you. We would like to help lift the body of Ali Akbar. We would like to lift the body of Qasim. We would like to defend the Haram. The Imam says, I wish you were all there on the day of Ashur to do what? At least you would have seen Kaifa astasqi litifli fa'abaw an yarhamuni. At least you would have seen me in this state when I was asking for water for my Ali Asghar. Kis halat mein main pani ka sawal kar raha tha. Mere sawal karne ke andaz ko bhi dekhte aur wahan से जो जवाब आया उस जवाब को भी देखते. ज़िबा हो गए अली असगर अपने बाप के हाथों में. अब इमाम हुसैन इस जनाजे को खैमे में ले जाना चाहते हैं. ये सबसे हल्का जनाजा है जो हुसैन ने अब तक उठाया है, लेकिन ऐसा महसूस होता है कि अली असगर अली अकबर से ज़्यादा संगीन है, जनाब कासिम के जनाजे से ज़्यादा संगीन है. एक मर्तबा खैमे की तरफ बढ़ते हैं. इन्ना लिल्लाहि व इन्ना इलैहि राजिऊन. ज़हन में शायद ख्याल आया होगा, अगर इसकी माँ ने पूछ लिया क्या मेरा अली असगर से इराब हो गया, क्या जवाब दूंगा. रुक जाते हैं, पलटते हैं. इन्ना लिल्लाहि व इन्ना इलैहि राजिऊन. फिर खैमे की तरफ बढ़ते हैं. फिर ज़हन में शायद ख्याल आया हो, अगर माँ ने पूछ लिया, अगर माँ ने पूछ लिया कि मेरे बच्चे के लिए से शोबा तीर क्यों इस्तेमाल हुआ. Ala ladatullahi alal qawmi zalimeen. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this majlis and to grant us the tawfiq to follow in the footsteps of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and to have our majalis aligned with the movement of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam. Matumi Hussain.
You see that infant's head on the spear, and how it's slaughtered from ear to ear. You see that infant's head on the spear, and how it's slaughtered from ear to ear. He is my baby, Ali-e-Asghar. He is my baby, Ali-e-Asghar. His shahada is inqilab. Umme-Rubab, Umme-Rubab, our lady, Umme-Rubab. Everyone, Umme-Rubab, Umme-Rubab, our lady, Umme-Rubab. You feel the tremors rising again. It is the final breath of Hussain. You feel the tremors rising again. It is the final breath of Hussain. He is my Aqa, the son of Zahra. He is my Aqa, the son of Zahra. He is Allah's intikhab. Umme-Rubab, Umme-Rubab, our lady, Umme-Rubab. 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 You hear this angel weeping alone. Her cries of Baba challenge the throne. You hear this angel weeping alone. Her cries of Baba challenge the throne. She is Sakina, my little princess. She is Sakina, my little princess. Her Sahara is Buturab. Umme-Rubab, Umme-Rubab, our lady, Umme-Rubab. Everyone, Umme-Rubab, Umme-Rubab, our lady, Umme-Rubab. Oh, not a single moment of calm from the streets of Kufa to Sham. Oh, not a single moment of calm from the streets of Kufa to Sham. Oh, can you see us, oh our Shia? Oh, can you see us, oh our Shia? At the mercy of every mob. Oh, Mero Bab, oh Mero Bab, oh our lady, oh Mero Bab. Everyone. Mero Bab, Mero Bab, oh our lady, oh Mero Bab. You smell the fragrance of Mustafa in the tears of Zainul Ibad. You smell the fragrance of Mustafa in the tears of Zainul Ibad. With every manzil, with every moment, with every manzil, with every moment, he is aging in his shabab. Mero Bab, Mero Bab, oh our lady, Mero Bab, Mero Bab, Mero Bab, oh our lady, Mero Bab. Oh, for your noble resistance, Hussain, I would offer my 2 kids again. Oh, for your noble resistance, Hussain, I would offer my 2 kids again. But for your trampled, unshrouded body, but for your trampled, unshrouded body, I will stand under the sun and sob. Oh, Mero Bab, oh, Mero Bab, oh, our lady, oh, Mero Bab. Everyone. Oh, Mero Bab, oh, Mero Bab, oh, our lady, oh, Mero Bab. You see that infant's head on the spear, and how it's slaughtered from ear to ear. You see that infant's head on the spear, and how it's slaughtered from ear to ear. He is my baby, Ali-e-Asghar. He is my baby, Ali-e-Asghar. His shahada is inqilab. Mero Bab, Mero Bab, oh our lady, Mero Bab. Everyone, Mero Bab, Mero Bab, oh our lady, Mero Bab, oh our lady, Mero Bab. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Mu'mineen, please take a seat. We will have a brief question and answer session. We have about 8-9 minutes for that. Again, those of you who know, you can enter your question on slido.com with Muharram 2022, but we can also take questions from the floor. Maulana, over to you.
Is there any questions from the audience?
Wa alaikum assalam.
So my question is with regards to what you pointed out with the Nahi and Munkar section. I kind of noticed this slight contradiction with Maulana Ali's phase when he was silent in the time when there was political anarchy to the maximum level, and there was this significant period in silence for, and so isn't that a kind of a paradox and a contradiction, or how was that justified in a way?
Amr bil Maruf Nahi Anil Munkar will take up different strategies in different times. So Amr bil Maruf done in a way that will lead to the destruction of the entire system of religion, for example, would not be allowed. So all of our Imams were doing Amr bil Maruf. This duty was not suspended in any time, even when Imam Hussain was dealing with the previous ruler, the duty of Umar was happening, but it did not take the form of a military aggression for certain reasons. Sometimes there were invitations and there were letters coming to the Imam in the previous, before Yazid took over, asking the Imam to come over, and they were ready to fight, and the Imam would recite to them that this is not the time. So Amr al-Ma'ruf does not mean that you blindly take up arms and you give up your life. You also have to look at the outcome, and that is important, and we mentioned that yesterday. The outcome is also important at times. You don't want to give out all of your soldiers and get them killed before any result is achieved. And that's what Imam Hussain was doing. When Yazid took over, he noticed that, and he realized that this is the time when his movement and his blood is going to pave the way for this movement to happen. So before this time, there was corruption in the society. The society was deteriorating. It was not that as soon as Yazid took over, he started to do things that Imam Hussain did not agree with. Things were deteriorating from before, but this was the right time for him to rise and make his blood bear the fruit that he wanted. Does that answer your question? So one important thing to realize is that we haven't gone into the rulings of Amr al-Ma'ruf, because there are a lot of rulings, and this Majlis would then turn into a fiqh class. So maybe if people are interested, we can have a separate class after the month of Muharram on the rules of Amr al-Ma'ruf, maybe today's session. If there is interest, maybe you can have your names noted down with Brother Junaid, and we can have a separate session on the rulings. One of the important aspects or conditions of Amr al-Ma'ruf is that you have to look at the outcome of your actions. For ordinary individuals, if Amr al-Ma'ruf, for example, is going to harm your life, your property, your loved ones, then that obligation is removed for ordinary humans, not for imams, and they have a different ruling. If you know that your Amr al-Ma'ruf will not yield any effect, then that obligation is removed again. So if you know that if I do Amr al-Ma'ruf to this person, he will become more stubborn in his sinning, then it is wajib on me not to do that. So there are rules and regulations of Amr al-Ma'ruf, and not knowing the entire rules and regulations is why some of these questions are arising. But that would need a more detailed classroom session learning to make sure. And it is important that we hold that if there is interest. So there's a question from there.
You mentioned Azan. So I wanted to ask, what was the divergent point of the Azan of our Azan and our Sunni brothers? Because there are substantial differences, as you know, between our Azan level and, more importantly, what was the point when this divergence began?
I'll have to look up to see when exactly in history this happened, if there are records of it. So I cannot answer this question right away. Any other question? There's this question which I don't think, what are my views on Matam and Zanjeers, and it's just not related, and it requires a separate session to talk about this, and how Amr al-Ma'ruf and Nahy al-Munkar can be used, is being used politically, and what are my opinions about it. Well, a lot of slogans can be used correctly and they can be used incorrectly. The same goes with all slogans. The slogan of human rights. How many wars in the past 50 years have been fought using the slogan of human rights? So a good slogan can be used positively and a good slogan can be used negatively. It is the responsibility of each and every individual to make sure that they themselves understand what Amr al-Ma'ruf Nahy al-Munkar means and whether the slogan is being used in the right manner. It is a responsibility of each one of us. Yes, please, question.
Assalamualaikum. In your lecture, you mentioned that the reason we have taqwa is because we fear the outcome of our actions. So why is it the imams who are the pure and did not commit any sins? Why is it they
repeat your question, please?
You mentioned in the lecture that the reason we have taqwa, so fear of Allah, is because we fear the outcome of our actions because of Allah's justice. So why is it that the Imams have the most fear of Allah when they are pure and they don't sin?
Very, very good question. Taqwa, I would say. Taqwa is that inner force that protects you from going against the wishes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we translate it as fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's directly not translated as fear. The meaning is not fear, it's stopping yourself, it's putting a brakes on yourself. So when the Imams have taqwa, it means that they hold themselves from sinning from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then they cannot sin in the sense that the knowledge and the willpower is so strong that they do not even think about sinning. But just like we do not think about certain things, certain sins, most of us must not have thought about eating garbage from the garbage can because we know how disgusting that is, because of our knowledge and awareness. Nobody is stopping us from doing that, right? But we know how disgusting that is, and therefore we don't eat it out of our own free will. The Imams, their imtihan and their test does not lie with abstaining from sins. No. Their imtihan and their test lies with the coloring of their thoughts. Are they going to think about something? Are they going to, when it comes to making a choice between a good and a better, will they choose the better or will they choose the good? Even both of them is allowed. So that is where their test is, and that is where they are wary of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unless they make a wrong choice. So their free will is there, knowledge is there, and because they realize the grandeur and majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are in awe and they are in fear that something might happen. They might perform an action that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might not like. So they exercise extreme caution and extreme care when it comes to dealing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, last question, inshallah.
During your discussion, you mentioned that there was an incident in which there was mathematics involved, and Imam followed the person to find out exactly what was going on. To my belief and to my understanding, I may have understood wrong, firstly. Imam knows each and everything. He does not need to follow someone to find out the truth behind it. So either my understanding was wrong or probably it was conveyed in a manner in which I took the message wrong. If you could please clarify that.
Yeah, so why did the Imam follow that person when the Imam is alim al-ghaib, for example? So the Imam should have known what this person was all about. The Imams, even if they know everything that Allah wants them to know, they still have an obligation to deal with people based on their apparent. So this is a rule that we all should keep in mind. The Imam knew what the people of Kufa would do. Why did he send a Muslim? The Muslim knew that the Imam knows what is happening. Why did he write a letter? Right? So they have that, even if they have all of that information, they are required by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to deal with people in a manner that is not revealed. Okay? So they base decisions, they will not, knowing what I have done, they will not deal me based on what I have done, they will keep that veil between us and deal with us. So Imam हमसे हमारे ज़ाहिर के मुताबिक अमल करते हैं, उनको इल्म भी हो. Even when a judge, if they are judging and they would judge, the Holy Prophet said, I am judging a matter between the two based on the evidence, not based on haqiqat, not based on ilm. So they have an obligation to deal with that, and that is what we see in this story. Sallu ala Muhammad wa alayhi Muhammad.
السلام عليك يا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا بقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. Everybody. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليك وعلى جدك وأبيك وعلى أمك وأخيك وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذريتك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا المرتضى الراضي بالقدر والقضاء. السلام عليك يا مغيث الشيعة والزوار في يوم الجزاء. السلام عليك وعلى أختك فاطمة المعصومة ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان. الأمان 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 من فتن الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وجعلنا من أنصارك وأعوانك والمستشهدين بين يديك. السلام عليك وعلى آبائك الطاهرين ورحمة الله وبركاته.